Just like the history and background of many projects, the birth of Beidou is also part of that era full of grief and indignation. In 1993, the United States intercepted the Chinese merchant ship Inha in the Arabian Sea, leading to the sensational Inha incident that shocked both domestic and international audiences. Following this incident, Chinese people became more aware that to maintain sovereign independence and integrity, the country needed to become stronger. The first step was to establish its own satellite navigation system, which would prevent being manipulated by others in the vast sea. The Inha incident took place in 1993. In 1994, China officially launched the Beidou satellite navigation system project. By 2000, the Beidou Phase 1 system was completed, followed by the Beidou Phase 2 system in 2012. On July 31, 2020, the completion and inauguration ceremony of the Beidou Phase 3 global satellite navigation system was held in Beijing. In the summer of 1993, the Chinese ocean freighter Inha was sailing in the Arabian Sea. This ship had been operating on the route from China to the Persian Gulf for years, transporting light industrial products and raw materials from China and importing agricultural products from the Middle East. By 1993, the Inha had completed dozens of voyages in the Indian Ocean without any mishaps. However, during its voyage in July, it encountered an unexpected disaster. Departing from Tianjin port, the Inha passed through China's Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, and Oman before reaching its final destination, Dubai. During this journey, the ship was loaded with goods such as plastic toys, stationery, metal components, and dyes. Each container was numbered, and each item was registered. However, on July 23, the United States informed China's foreign ministry through diplomats that they had received intelligence suggesting that the Inha was carrying internationally prohibited chemical weapon materials, specifically thiodiglycol and thionyl chloride, destined for their adversary, Iran. Consequently, the United States requested China to allow an inspection of the vessel, or else they would forcibly board and conduct the inspection themselves. After receiving the information, China inquired with the China Ocean Shipping Company to verify the situation. The company responded, "The Inha's records are clear, and there is no trace of these chemical materials on board." Additionally, the countries it passed through did not load any relevant materials onto the ship. The United States, however, presented its own intelligence, which astonishingly stated, "The Inha set sail from Dalian port, carrying 2 containers bound for Iran, with the code name CSAQ 3101 and 3102, containing thiodiglycol and thionyl chloride." China couldn't help but feel puzzled. The US got even the departure port of the Inha wrong, and yet they were using this so-called inside information to demand an inspection of the vessel. It seemed entirely unreasonable. However, regardless of the authenticity of the situation and without heeding the explanations from the Chinese side, the US was determined to stick to their narrative of China engaging in covert transactions. While negotiations were still ongoing in Beijing, news arrived from the open seas. The Inha had been tracked by the US military. In early August, the Inha was navigating in the Gulf of Oman, and US military helicopters were deployed to fly around the vessel, capturing images of the equipment and personnel on board. On August 3, at noon, US warships approached the Inha and followed it into the Strait of Hormuz. This information quickly reached China, and the US promptly presented China with 3 options for resolution: have the ship return, or allow US personnel to board the ship, or anchor at a nearby Omani port and allow US personnel to conduct an inspection. By this time, the US military had effectively blockaded the Inha. At 7 p.m. that day, China Ocean Shipping Company, with no other choice, instructed the Inha to drop anchor and await further instructions in the Strait of Hormuz. The Inha was now stranded in the vast sea. After anchoring, the ship's engines were shut down, and the entire crew remained on duty. It was the first time a Chinese merchant vessel encountered such a situation on the open sea. Captain Zhang Rude comforted the crew while seeking guidance from authorities in China. Soon after, China's negotiating representatives presented the cargo manifest and other information related to the Inha, asserting that the U.S. had made a mistake and that the ship could not possibly be carrying chemical materials. However, the U.S. stood firm, insisting that their intelligence was accurate and that an inspection of the vessel was necessary. The summer sun blazed fiercely in the Middle East, and the Beidou was anchored in the midst of the open sea during negotiations. Under the scorching sun, the temperature on the ship's deck soared to over 50 degrees Celsius. Inside the stuffy cabins, temperatures exceeded 30 degrees Celsius during the day, yet the sailors persisted in their work under these challenging conditions. During this period, the captain informed the head office that the fresh water and other resources on the ship were running out, and the sickness of the crew increased. Moreover, because of the restriction on bathing, many crew members suffered from skin diseases and their mental state was very bad. The most important thing is that the United States forcibly cut off the GPS navigation of the Beidou at this time, forcing China to submit as soon as possible. The cut-off of the GPS signal and the electronic interference from the U.S. prevented China from obtaining the specific location of the Beidou at sea, and the rescue could not be carried out for a while. It berthed in Dammam Port, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, China, and Saudi Arabia conducted joint inspections. After the decision was made, China sent Xia Zukang, Deputy Director of the Department of International Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to lead a team to the Middle East. Saudi Arabia also sent people to blockade the Beidou, and could only transport supplies up, without any other contact. On August 29, under the supervision of the Chinese side, the U.S. military sent personnel on board the ship to search, first looking for the two containers, SAC 3101 and 3102, in the intelligence, but they couldn't find them after searching around. At this time, the Americans not only did not suspect that their intelligence was wrong, but felt that the Chinese crew had hidden the two containers, so they wanted to search all the containers on the ship. This move not only made China very angry, but even the representatives of Saudi Arabia felt that it was too aggressive. But the United States insisted on looking for it, and vowed not to give up if it didn't look for it. In desperation, the Chinese sailors led U.S. search personnel to search through more than 600 containers on the ship. American soldiers rummaged through boxes and boxes on the ship, and saw boxes of light industrial products and raw materials, and finally found several metal vats from a container. The U.S. military on the deck cheered, but the Chinese crew members looked very helpless. They told the U.S. military that this was a dye, and it would be destroyed after it was turned on and oxidized. But the U.S. military is even more excited. If the Chinese side refuses to let it go, he insists on doing so. Finally, the U.S. military opened the dye and took it for testing. The results showed that it was really a dye, not those chemical raw materials. Since nothing was found, China demanded that the United States immediately leave the Beidou and sign an agreement with China and Saudi Arabia, declaring to the world that there are no chemical agents on the Beidou. The U.S. representative asked Washington for instructions, and finally, in the face of conclusive evidence and the truth, the White House had to agree to sign. On September 4, 1993, China, the United States, and Saudi Arabia signed the Beidou investigation report, confirming that the cargo ship was clean and free of any prohibited items. Afterwards, the Beidou continued to Dubai and completed its voyage. When Xia Zukang, Deputy Director of the Department of International Affairs, later recalled this incident, he said that the United States did not listen to what China said at the time, and even refused reasonable requests. Although the U.S. military did not find any prohibited goods back then, the act itself had damaged the dignity of China's diplomacy, which shows the huge impact this matter had on the minds of that generation.